All right, welcome along. My name's Bosh. This is Bosh's Ableton Beginner Bits, and today we're going to be taking a look at the two native drum machines within Ableton. So within Ableton. So first we'll take a look at Impulse, see what you can do with it, what limitations it's got, and then we'll take a look at Drum Rack. Same way, we'll look at what you can do with it and what the limitations are and things like that. I may even touch a little bit on Simpler and Drum Sampler, but we'll see about that because they're kind of more of the same in regards to sampling. But these ones, I feel like these ones are more engineered towards drum samples at least. When I first started producing, I used to use Impulse all the time, and then I moved over to Drum Rack. Now, before we get started, I've always got to tell you about buymeacoffee.com/BoshDubs. You can go there and support this channel. You can go I nearly said support this coffee for the price of a channel. You can go there and support this channel for the price of a coffee. Otherwise, the best thing you can do for this channel is to like, subscribe, share, comment, get involved, go watch old videos. That is the one thing that gets this out to more people like you and will help the channel grow. And that's definitely way more productive than any cash donation. So without further ado, let me get into it. This is Drum Rack versus Impulse. Now, what I've got is two instances. I've got an Impulse here. Let's have a little look at Impulse quickly. So you've only got 8 channels there, 8 sample bays, but then you've got all this individual sample control, and then these bits at the end control the whole kit, and so they apply to everything. Now, Drum Rack, you can see here, a bit more complicated. We've got loads more sort of sample options, so we've got all these sets of 16 banks that we can use, and a lot more flexibility in regards to the manipulation. But we will get to that. First thing we're going to look at is Impulse. So let's just mute the Drum Rack. Now, I've just put a basic kick, stick, and hat set, 3 drums in here. Just play the loop. Yeah, the simplest loop. And then what I'm going to do is just go around and have a mess around with some of these settings while that's playing. Now, I think the best way to show this is probably going to be on the snare or the hats. So, in Impulse, you've got all these different little sections. Your first section is like your main section that decides how the sample gets played. So we've got a start point. We've got a soft control as well, which kind of adds a little bit of attack. It stops the attack being so sort of rigid. And then the start means you can move it. So let's do that with the hats. I think that's solo. Yep, that's solo. So if I move the start, all right, you can hear that sample get shorter. And all that's doing is moving the start point of that sample. So that's playing the whole sample. That's playing just the last little end bit of the sample, all right? Now we've got transposition. Yeah, I might just crank this up a little bit just for the sake of the video. So you've got transposition, simple, and then you've got stretch. Now, I've got the velocity set. I'm going to turn that off. So the stretch control does what it says on the tin. It controls how stretched or squashed your sample is. So let's play it at 0. And then let's put it up to 100. And then let's take it all the way down to -100. And then back to 0. Okay, so you can see it's just here how it's squashing and it's lengthening and shortening the sample. Got various velocity controls here. So what I've done is I've applied some velocity to these hats. You can hear some are a little bit louder. Now, if I increase the percentage on the velocity control under the stretch on the hats, then it's going to mean that the stretch is going to be applied using the velocity. All right? So what that means is if you've got a hat with a low velocity, it's going to be short. If you've got one with a high velocity, it's going to be long. All right? If you don't know about velocity, go check out one of the other videos on it. The velocity are these controls here that you can move up and down, and it affects basically how loud or soft the sample is played. All right. So we've got velocity controls. Let's put this all the way up to 100. So now you can hear that each hat has a different amount of stretch. So let me just, wrong one. Let me just do these in a way where it gets decreasingly quieter. All right, so you can hear that sample starts long and gets shorter. Okay, so that's a really nice sort of effect you can do there. Let me just put this back to normal. Okay, so we've covered the, ooh, what's mode? I'm not going to lie. Oh, let's actually. So I don't know what mode A and mode B are on this. So I'm going to just click on the little eye down there. Oh, it's just, no, it's not going to show me. Oh, well, worth a try. So yeah, I don't know what mode A and B are. They're two different modes. It sounds a little bit different on the stretch when you do that. Okay, next we've got drive. Let's get rid of that. Next we've got drive. So we turn that on. No difference until you start to add the drive, and it's literally just overdrive. So have a listen. Yeah, I don't need to go any louder with that, you can hear that. So that's a drive control. We've got a filter. Yep, we can switch the mode of that. Okay, the resonance, which obviously affects the filter. Okay, and then we've got, let's have a look, random. Okay, filter, just applying a randomness to the filter. And then last thing we've got is the more general controls. So we've got the decay and a control to decide how that decay works. So whether it works as a gate or it works as if another trigger's been hit. All right, so you can control the length there. Pan is an obvious one. Left, right, yeah. Velocity controls and random controls on there as well. So one thing to note with impulse is that the square controls directly below the knobs are affected by the knobs or vice versa. So you're working down in vertical lines here. So the start is affected with the soft, the transpose is these two, stretch is these two, and so on. So that's how you could kind of divide it up and see how it works. We've got a volume control. That's an individual control for the sample. Yep, basic, velocity as well on there. Mute and solo. And so then the last set of controls on here are the ones on the far right-hand side, and that's a global control or a master control. So you've got a global volume. Yep. Global time. Okay, so you can hear again, that's just shortening and stretching the samples. And overall transpose. Yeah. So that's impulse, really. That's about it. Now, the limitations that are in it, it's only got 8 slots. The controls are all pretty basic. Your filter is just select the mode of the filter and then you sweep. There's not too much else with it. You obviously resonance and stuff. I like using this for more like one-shot samples and things like bongos and stuff like that. I don't know why. To me, it's just a better instrument, better kit for using those kind of things. It's a better sampler or whatever you want to call it. So that's impulse. Now, again, the limitations of impulse are its size. You've only got 8 things on there. So if we move over to drum rack now, slightly different kit in here. Nothing to do with the sound of it or anything. These are just completely different drum samples. All right. Now, you can already see in drum rack that we've got a lot more space for the samples. So you've got loads of slots all up and down here. You can put hundreds of drums in. I'm saying hundreds, but it's 16, 16, 16, 16, 16. It's probably 80 odds or something like that. So that's the first benefit of this. And then this works by giving you sample pads, and then each sample pad, you can put whatever you want into it. So by default, if you're putting, so I've got these samples playing. So now it's just playing samples, and each pad has simpler in it. So when you drop, if I just go, hang on a second. If I go to my instruments now, where's simpler? If I put simpler on a channel on its own, that's what it looks like, which is the same as what's in the drum rack. Look, same thing, yeah? So then in reality, what we really need to do is go through and look at simpler and drum rack together, because that's where the combination really lies. So in simpler, works in a similar way. Let me just move to the hats because there's more of them. Oh, there it is. Okay, so that's our hat sample. Already we've got the options to trigger it in different ways. So we can slice, which is more suitable for a loop, and that automatically splits your loop into transient samples. So you know where the kick hits, where the snare hits. You can see them all pretty well on a drum kit. This sort of splits it for you, so you don't have to go through cutting all the individual samples. But this has just got one sample in it. As a matter of fact, let me do this. There you go. So now you can see how it has split all across. It's basically each one of those blue lines is now a sample on that thing. All right? So you can do that. You can slice just one original sample. Just have it as a one-shot sample that just triggers once. There's also a classic option to set loops and things like this. All right, so this is the different methods of sampling. So we've got classic. Where's my hat? So this is on classic with a loop set. So this is going to keep looping that sample round as it sort of gets quieter the longer you get away from where you pressed it. All right, so you can see it looping round on there. Now, if I click on one shot, it does what it says on the tin. That is one shot. All right. So you've got all your standard. Let's look at the different controls. Classic's got a few different controls compared to one shot. So Classic has got attack, decay, sustain, release there, whereas this has just got fade in, fade out, and a transpose control. All right. So the difference there really lies in the differences between impulse and simpler. But drum rack gets better because you can start to open it up and look at your individual samples a bit more closely. So let me just expand this as far as possible. I clicked on the 3 lines there, and then I've clicked on the I/O settings there. And now we've got a full list of all these samples, and we can change more sort of MIDI-based technical aspects of it with this. All right. So we can change the note that it's on. So even though you've put it on a certain note on the keyboard, you can change that on there. Oh, what have I done? Okay, and that moves the sample as well. Oh, that's interesting. So say I want to move this snare sample from there to F#1. I'll just go on here. Ah, look, it's listed. Wow, okay. And there we go. That's crazy. All right, so you can move those sample arounds easy. Play is more sample control. So if I find this snare, that's playing, that decides where the sample gets played. So you're playing it at its root, at its normal place, or are you playing it on at a higher note? Yeah, so easy pitch control. Choke. Now, choke is more for your hi-hats. So if you've got a long hi-hat and a short hi-hat, putting the choke on means that the long hi-hat will get cut short when the short hi-hat plays. All right? Have I got a... Okay, let's do it with these. So we've got the ride. So let's put the choke channel on 1. And let's go to the hat and put that choke channel on 1 as well. So they need to be on the same channel for this to work. And then all I'm going to do is draw a new track. Let's get me... I want the ride and the hat. There we go. So I'm going to put a ride here, a hat here. Okay, so you can see how the hi-hat is cutting off the ride cymbal. If I take that out, put it back in. Yeah, so you can see how you're making one cut off the other, and it works both ways. So the ride would cut off the hat would cut off the ride. Okay. Let's get back into here. What else? Volume, pan, all that business in there. Now, with the drum rack, the other good thing you can do is add macro controls. So this is where you can get really in-depth with your automation. Now, click the little circle at the top here, and we get another set of knobs. Now, these can be set as a macro. A macro is a knob that can be set to control multiple things at the same time. So you can set this macro knob to control the pitch of a kit, but also the amount of reverb that's on the kit. You can basically assign it to anything. They're just blank buttons that you can assign loads of controls to. And that's it. Now, they are the main differences between them. There's definitely a lot more to get into in drum rack, but it all depends on how you arrange your drums. So I know when I first started, I just used impulse, and I'd use one impulse for all my drums. And then, is it impulse? Yeah, sorry, impulse, yeah. I'd use one for all my drums. And that were all right, but then I started finding I wanted to do a bit more technical things, a little bit more sort of individual drum editing and automation and things. So that's when I started moving over to drum rack, because I just found that a lot more flexible for that kind of thing. Now, one way you could do it is to have multiple tracks, and this is what I do a lot of the time now, multiple tracks with multiple instances of impulse or drum rack. So I'll show you how I do it, because I don't use impulse too much these days, apart from maybe the odd effect, like one-shot effects, sirens, little lasers, all that kind of thing. So let's get rid of impulse. Now, the way I would build my drum track would be to have multiple instances of drum rack, and then all I would do is put my kick on one, I'd put my snare on the second one, on the third one, I'd put my hats. And then on the fourth one, I would put my percussion. Oh, hang on. Just going to draw some random 16ths percussion in there. Okay, so now let me rename these so it makes sense. Kick, snare, hats, perk. And now when I click here and play all those 4 samples, you're going to get all the drums together. All right. Now I'm not going to go too much more into the editing of that, because that's not what this video is about. I am going to sort out this snare though. That might be why. Okay, so this is the way I would ultimately do it. I'd have multiple instances of drum rack. So for my hats, for example, I could have 3 or 4 different hats in that drum rack, and then I've got nice control over them. But yeah, that's pretty much it. This is going to be a short video, like I say, just sort of showing you the differences, the different ways you can sample drums between simpler, impulse, and drum rack, kind of. So I'm going to leave that one there, simple one. My name's Bosh. This is Bosh's Ableton Beginner Bits, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.